We just want to keep it as absolutely safe for everybody as possible. So we leave the doors open and the fans on. I have a verse from the Gita. There's a bunch of context. Hey, let me get some more volume just to make it easier. I could give a lot of context to this verse, but I think it lends itself well to just a straight read from scratch. So we can do that, depending on how far we get. Depending on how far we get, I'll throw in some context on the back. The verse is Manusyanam Sahasreshu. Out of thousands of people. Manusyanam Sahasreshu. Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye. Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye. Someone, anyone. In Sanskrit, when you say kaschit, although it literally means anyone, somebody, it's used in the sense to mean hardly anybody, practically nobody. So, kaschit yatati siddhaye. Out of thousands of people, maybe one of them will strive for perfection. Siddhaye. Siddha means perfection. Siddhaye. Oh, am I not mic'd up? That's a problem. Does that mean that everything I've said has been ungrasped?
I think you can still hear it, but it's better this way.
Manushyanam sahasreshu. Out of thousands of people. Kaschit yatati siddhaye. Maybe one of them will strive. Yatati comes from yad. It means they'll strive, they'll reach out for. Siddhaye, for perfection. Siddha means perfection. Siddhaye means for perfection. Yatatam api siddhanam. And of all those strivers, and even out of all those perfected people, there's like a hierarchy which is being created here. So at the lowest level, you have thousands of people. And then out of all those thousands of people, one of them will try for perfection. Then out of all of those triers, and even out of all those people who tried and achieved perfection. Do you follow? Yatatam api siddhanam. Of the strivers and also of the perfected. So there's three tiers. There's your average mass of people, there's the strivers, and there's the perfected people. Out of them, kaschin mam veti tatvataha. Maybe. Does anybody? One person might know me in truth. Veti tatvataha. He or she knows me in truth. Thousands of people are just milling about, living lives of quiet desperation. Out of those people, maybe there's a heroic great soul who starts the hero's journey and strives for perfection, out of thousands of those strivers, and even out of thousands of those people who achieve perfection, out of all of them, maybe somebody knows me in truth. It literally means like anyone knows me in truth. It's almost like a question. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. That's Prabhupada's translation. The literal Sanskrit word used is manushyanam, sahasreshu, out of thousands of men. Manusha means men. But just as in English, like in Spanish, is that Vraja? Tell her to come in. Quickly. I was looking for a Spanish speaker. Hey, Vraja. How do you say boy in Spanish? Boy? Yeah. Niño. And how do you say or chico? Really, niño is kind of like a baby, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So how do you say boy in Spanish? I'd say I would go chico, no? Huh?
Chico is just like saying guy.
Chico's like saying guy?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Like smaller in size.
Huh?
Chico can also mean like smaller in size.
Niño only refers to a small child. Boy in English refers to both a small child as well as an adult who's being referred to casually. Chico is actually an exact replication of the English word boy because it can be used for both a regular person, like in the sense of guy, as well as for a small child. Niño, however, can only be used to mean a small child, and therefore it's not exactly like the word boy. It's more akin to the word toddler or young or child, actually. Child would be a better translation of niño. Sorry, but I speak Spanish. So how do you say boy in Spanish? All right. I think, hey, ¿cómo se dice? How do you say boy in Spanish?
Boy?
Yeah.
Niño?
God, you guys are killing me. You guys don't speak English that well is the problem. Can boy refer to an adult male?
No.
The word boy in English cannot be used to refer to an adult male. I mean, you have a master's degree. Can boy refer to an adult male? You were born here. Can boy refer to an adult male? What's with your boy? Anyway, I'm online now. I'm like totally disturbed. I was trying to bring you guys in to help me. You simply disturbed me. It's okay. Hey, boy in Spanish. That's because the word boy you think only refers to a child. However, the boy in English has a much wider usage. The word niño means child. The word boy can refer to anything.
Well, anything up to like puberty. After that, you wouldn't call somebody
100% you would. How old's your boy? He's a teenager. He's a teenage boy. Would be totally appropriate. 100%. Sorry, I know English and Spanish. And obviously you guys don't. Okay. So anyway, chico is how you say boy, Spanish. Chica is how you say girl. By the way, if you want to understand girl, can girl refer to an adult? Oh my God, what's the counterpart to the word girl in English? Oh, I just got proven right. And all of you are proven wrong. Can girl refer to an adult?
Yeah.
Can boy refer to an adult? What's your response, court-appointed translator with a degree in translation? That's right. And Vraja, you just get too big of an ego to accept, but I know I'm right. Chico means boy. Chica means girl. It's gendered language in Spanish. So how do you say male doctor in Spanish? Doctor. Okay? And so how do you say female doctor in Spanish? No. There's no word doctora. The word for a female doctor in Spanish is doctor. El doctor. You follow? In gendered languages, when you have only one word to describe both male and female, the word will be masculine. The word manusha is used here, which means among men, but what it actually means in context is amongst men and women. There are efforts to adjust language to make it more inclusive, but this is just, you go to any language, any serious language with male and female gendered words, and the male gender words will stand for both. So you'll say mankind, and mankind of course includes there's no such word, right? That's right, it includes women as well. That's right. So manusyanam sahasreshu. So Prabhupada's translation is a literal one. Out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. This whole elaborate thing that you guys problematized for me dramatically was just meant to help defend Sanskrit's usage of man to refer to both men and women, the same way the word doctor in Spanish refers to both men and women. Did you follow that? All right. We may not be able to keep this because you guys raised my ire, so now I might have to delete it afterwards. Manusyanam sahasreshu, of thousands of people. Kaschit yatati siddhaye, maybe one strives. Yatati means like endeavoring intensely. The word for a sannyasi in Sanskrit is yati. A renunciate who strives for perfection is a yati. From ya, they're striving, reaching out, stretching out, going to the ends of the earth, searching after. Siddhaye, perfection. Yatatam opi siddhanam. And of all those strivers, and even of all those people who have achieved perfection, who strove for perfection. Kaschin maveti tatvataha. Kaschin mam veti tatvataha. Maybe one person knows me in truth. What's the feel you get from this verse? What's the verse trying to teach us? Sans context, without anything else going on. What's the verse teaching? What's the feeling you get from the verse? What's your raw feel from the verse? What does it communicate to you? Yeah, loud.
The thing he speaks like knowing him is just so incredibly rare.
Okay? You get the idea that knowing Krishna is incredibly rare. What else do you get? For instance, I could say contracting Ebola is incredibly rare. Right? Would there be anything wrong with that statement in English? No. So, knowing Krishna is very rare doesn't mean it's good or bad, does it? What else do you get?
It's also very difficult for people striving.
All right, it's very rare, and part of why it's so rare is because even if you try, you might not get it. Right? Huh? You get the idea that it's valuable, which is different. So now we have rare, and rare because even if you try for it, you probably won't get it. Like people climb Mount Everest, but there's also a bunch of dead bodies strewn all along the trail. So when you climb Mount Everest, I haven't climbed Mount Everest, but I've watched movies about people climbing Mount Everest, and they see dead bodies on the trail. As they're climbing up, there's just dead body after dead body. Hundreds of people have died climbing Mount Everest, and all their bodies are up there in the mountains, right off the beaten path, as a perpetual graveyard. Because you just can't bring them down. It's too dangerous. Discarded bottles of oxygen are up there. They're valuable. Those bottles are worth some money. It's just not worth it to grab them and bring them down. People don't realize it. People think they climb Everest. It's really cool. They don't realize that the Gurkhas are this race of short, squat, thick, Tibetan, Nepali people who are uniquely endowed with this incredible ability to oxygenate their blood, where their heart is able to oxygenate their blood from their lungs and like pump it through their body, and really very, very strong hearts. And whenever Western people go to the mountains to climb Mount Everest, the Gurkhas have already been up there in inclement weather without oxygen, because they carry the other people's oxygen on their backs. They go up there without oxygen. They set all the ladders, all the bridges. They bring the oxygen up and store it. Then they carry up your oxygen and your food for you when you go to climb Everest. And still people are losing their fingers and toes. And they have to climb multiple times a season, and they don't climb when the weather's great, because when the weather's great, it's reserved for all the people who pay $50,000 a piece to climb Everest. And so they have to climb up when the weather's not so great. They're like the unsung heroes of the mountain. Even sometimes they die on the mountain. So it's rare. It's rare because even if you try, there's no guarantee you're going to make it. And you get communicated the idea that it's valuable. Why? You don't have to answer that. There's nothing in the verse to suggest it's valuable. Except maybe one person might know me in truth. And that word truth, tattvataha, it's the same word we have here, tattva. That one of them might know me in truth. That communicates that that person is in touch with reality. And reality and truth is almost by its very definition considered to be valuable. You may have been able to answer that, you may not have, but we're online and stuff, and so I just wanted to make it easy for everybody. It's rare because even if you try, and even if you become perfect, you still might not know Krishna. And it's valuable because it means you know the truth. And the truth, for most people, is a valuable thing. There's a song called Against the Wind by a band. Bob Seger is the name of the lead singer of the band. The band is named after him. And it said, one of the lines from the song is, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. When I think about this song, I'm reminded of my little brother who died tragically 5 years ago. And somehow the day after he died, when I was going to train with you, we were driving down the train at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was driving separately from you. The song came on the radio. It really affected me. I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. It's almost like a prayer for ignorance, because something's happened in that person's life which has caused them deep sadness. And they were ignorant that it was going to happen, or that it had happened, or that they were living a naive existence. And now they're mature and they're no longer living a naive existence, but they almost wishfully are hoping that they could go back in time and live in that naive state again. Sometimes you find stuff like this in poetry. I'm sure there's an equivalent in Shakespeare. I just wasn't raised on Shakespeare. I was raised on American music, so that's what comes to mind. But despite that, or with that caveat in place, for the most part, we want to know the truth. We aspire to know the truth. We'll take the truth even if it's hard. You follow? So yeah, among thousands of people, one strives for perfection. Out of thousands, ostensibly, of those, and even the thousands who actually achieve perfection. So it's 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000. So we're in the billions now. Right? You follow? And it wasn't just 1,000, it was thousands. So that could be, 100,000. You follow? So, but 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 is a billion. And so the numbers are significant. These three tiers. Maybe one person really understands Krishna. And they understand the truth of Krishna. And therefore they understand the truth of reality. And because we want the truth, therefore it's valuable. And then what you were going to say, Kat? Loud.
I'm just a little confused. What I thought to me perfection was to know.
Yeah, I thought that. I was waiting for somebody to bring that up. Siddha means perfection. Siddhana means of the perfect. Siddhaye means for perfection. So they're yatati siddhaye. They're striving for perfection. But amongst those who are perfect, maybe one knows Krishna in truth. So that would mean what? That would mean the word siddha in Sanskrit is not used in the same way we use the English word perfection. Could I say, I'm perfecting my ability to overeat? Would there be anything wrong with that saying in English? There'd be nothing wrong with that statement in English. So we do use the word perfection in a variety of ways, and the word perfection is context dependent. What you mean is that you thought absolute perfection meant knowing Krishna. You see that? I mean, I loved my lunch, I love my wife, I love God. I'm using the word love. It was a good meal. He's a good man or a woman. You follow? Those are two very different senses of the same word good. Three very different senses of the word love. English is like this, in that one word can be used in a variety of contexts. So what you were meant to say was, I think absolute perfection means Krishna. Right? Which I think goes along with this very nicely. The word siddha in Sanskrit, from siddh to perfect, refers to people who have achieved mystic power and who live very long lives and who are incredibly wise but powerful. The word is used very similar to how the word yogi is used in Sanskrit. In old literature on Sanskrit, the word yogi, like in the Gita, meant someone who had achieved a union with God, some kind of a devotional union or another type of union with God. But the word yogi in medieval Hindi, but also Sanskrit literature, referred to like an evil wizard. Stories in India abound, folk stories from around the medieval period of a yogi coming into a village, controlling everybody's mind, stealing their wealth and their women, and wreaking havoc on the village. They were like the boogeymen. You follow? There's a song called Gypsy Queen. Although the word gypsy is no longer a good name for the Romani people. But it was the old name for the Romani people, who are thought to have hailed from India, actually, and to have come across land and settled in the Slavic region that I hail from. And so the Romani people were called gypsies. It's where you get pejorative terms like "don't gyp me from," which is because gypsies became famous for conning people, and so they, that term, that's where it came from. It's no longer considered to be appropriate to use. You don't find it being used in print anymore. They've gotten rid of it. They're also called travelers in Ireland and England. It's the same group of people, the same culture of people. The song Gypsy Queen, which became quite famous, was about a gypsy who came to a village and burned the village down and killed all the people and ruined everything. And so it's like you gotta leave town as soon as you hear the gypsies are coming. That was how the word yogi was used in medieval India. That's kind of the word siddha. It referred to people with incredible mystic powers, but not necessarily to people who had achieved mukti, or liberation per se. Very powerful material beings who had control over nature to some extent and were like wizards or warlocks, sort of like the figure Merlin in King Arthur, somewhat benevolent, somewhat malevolent, somewhere in between in that gray space. And or in modern day, that's the Gandalf the Grey, right? And so that's actually how siddhas were conceived of in Sanskrit literature. Depending on context, it could also mean absolute perfection, but that would be an easy resolution, and so would understanding it just to be without a capital S. Does that resolve the problem for you? Good question. All right. With the time we have left, I'm going to just go ahead and offer you some thoughts I have about the verse, now that you guys have the chance to contribute. Manusyanam sahasreshu, out of thousands of people, kaschid yatati siddhai, one of us may strive for perfection. Yatatam api siddhanam, of those strivers, of those perfected even, kaschin mam veti tatvataha, maybe one of them knows me in truth. I picked this verse today because I think that as devotees, we have decided that this is going to be our journey. In essence, what it means to be a devotee is that you have dedicated your life to trying to become someone who understands Krishna in truth. Why do we follow our rules? Like we take vows. No meat, fish, eggs, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. Why do we take those vows? We take those vows so that we have a better ability to focus and understand Krishna. The side benefit is you'll be happier. The side benefit is you'll be more pious. The side benefit is you'll be less exploitative. But the reason why we follow our lifestyle is so that we don't become confused and muddled and incapable of deeply thinking about Krishna. Why do we chant japa every day? We chant japa every day because it is our striving to know, see, and touch Krishna. That is our striving for perfection, with a capital P. Along the way, we have to avoid temptations. I'll segue out of songs from the 70s and I'll go back a century. There's a famous poem by a poet named Rudyard Kipling. He's quite famous poet. And he wrote, "Miles to go before I sleep. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have many promises to keep. Miles to go before I sleep." It creates the image of someone on a journey. And as they're on the journey, they're traversing the forest. And those woods are lovely, dark, and deep. There's all sorts of tangential stuff that you could enjoy and spend time with. I think in the Odyssey, there was the sirens and their song, their siren song. The Odysseus, the hero of the Odyssey, is traveling on the water. It's very similar to traveling in the forest in Kipling's poem. But the Greeks were a seafaring people. And so he was traveling on the water, and there were these women who would sing. And if the sailors, excuse me, if the sailors heard that song, they became entranced and they crashed their ship on the rocks. So Odysseus, they plugged their ears with wax so they could not hear the siren song. There was also the land of the lotus eaters, who were intoxicated. It seems like lotus eaters it's like an old world opium den. But they would just waste their time doing nothing. And so they also had to escape from them and avoid them. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. There's so many things we can disport ourselves with and enjoy with. And so many different things we can get into that will detract from our journey. Why do we follow these 4 regular principles? So we can focus. So we can stay sharp. We can move with intention. Intendere is the root of intention. It means to aim at, like an arrow. We can aim straight and move towards our goal. So, out of thousands of people, what are we? We are people. One person strives for perfection. That's us. And when you're striving, that doesn't mean you won't get dissuaded or distracted. It doesn't mean you're going to make it. You're glorious for starting the hero's journey, but nowhere near as glorious as a person who completes the hero's journey. And so this verse chastens us to the task that we're embarking on. And then api siddhanam, even the perfected, even amongst them maybe one person knows Krishna in truth. So on one hand we might get distracted by low things, but we might also even get distracted by high things. Tatra sattvam nirmalatva prakashakam anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanaga. Goodness is pure and illuminating, but it conditions you by happiness and knowledge. It binds you by happiness and knowledge. Sometimes when you become pious, you begin to enjoy your own piety. These things are called bhaktyuta anarthas, unwanted things that arise from bhakti itself. You get a little fame, you get a little recognition, you get a little bit of peace, and then you want to relax and become complacent. We embark with all sincerity on our hero's journey, but it's not easy. And we're being told here, don't stop moving and don't settle for the good. What's the enemy of the best? What's the enemy of the best? The good. The enemy of the best is the good. The enemy of first place is second place. And so we're being told here not to get distracted by some low thing, which is what happens to most people. Most people get distracted by some low thing. They fall victim to their base desires. Most of us never even get to a level where we can be distracted by some high thing. But high things can also be distractions. We need to become focused enough on our goal that we're like the arrow maker. In old Indian literature, the arrow maker is the emblem, the epitome of focus. You know the story of the arrow maker? There was a village. In the village, there's an arrow maker. Every village has to have an arrow maker. Just like they have to have a blacksmith and so many other things. Everyone in the village was going about their duty, but then the king came. Now when the king comes, everything stops. Everyone comes out to see what's going on. And that's important, because if you ignore the king, you might lose your head. Literally. So just out of fear and respect and interest, everyone comes out to see the king and his royal entourage and retinue, with the musicians and the courtesans and the courtiers and the elephants and the horses and the army and the festoons and the instruments. You follow? So the whole village came out. And they watched this grand procession. And when it was over, they were talking amongst themselves, like villagers, or we have a term called gramya kata. Gramya Katha. Gramya Katha. And so the word Gramya Katha literally means village talk. And it refers to gossip. So the villagers were engaging in their village talk, their gossip. And they said to the arrow maker, what did you think of the king's entourage? What did you think of that procession? And the villager responded and said, what procession? Because he was so focused on making the arrow straight that he blocked everything out, and time and space disappeared, and he was focused on one thing and one thing only, because that's the level of focus you need to have to make an arrow which will fly perfectly straight. And so the arrow maker is the guru that teaches us how to focus to the point where we become laser sharp and nothing dissuades us from our goal. Manushanam sahasreshu. Thousands of people. One of them, kaschit, yatati siddhaye. One of them strives for perfection. We are all that one. And what happens to most of us? We give up. We go back to our material life. For the white and black and non-Indian brown people here, that means you stop chanting japa. That means you go back to whatever nonsense you were doing before you met us. And you come a few times a year for holidays. Jamashtami, Gaur Purnima, a few days a year you come. You fall by the wayside and you get back to your material life. And something like the quarantine really helps you with that. If you were barely hanging on and then the quarantine hits, then all the more reason to go back to your material life. Usually when we open back up again, then you come a couple times, and then you slip, we open back up again, you think I'm going to come back, and then you come back a couple times, and then you're gone. Now if you're a Deshi, if you're an Indian, then striving but not completing the journey usually means you give up chanting japa. Most Indian people don't eat meat, at least here in this room. So many people in India anyway. Hundreds of millions of people don't eat meat in India anyway. But the people who come to temples regularly don't eat. Most Indian people don't take drugs or alcohol. There's some exceptions, but for the most part. Most Indian people get married to one person and stay faithful for their whole life. How old are you?
20,
How long you been married?
20 years.
20 years. How many girlfriends have you had in life? You had one girlfriend your whole life? Where is she? Yeah, that's right. It's very common. Very common. Right? You never had a girlfriend. You've been with one woman your whole life, right? Yes. Very common. So they don't fall away in the same way that I might fall away. Of course, I'm also like you now. I've been around too long. I have Deshi blood in my bones now. I'm white, but I'm like a Kashmiri. If you're from the West, falling down usually involves some drugs, some illicit sex, maybe divorce. things of this nature. If you're from the East, it usually just involves maybe giving up your japa, not coming to the temple, getting too busy with your family. We're being told here to be careful. Because even if you strive, that's just the beginning. And even you get something. You get some shanti, some peace. You get some anubhuti, some realization. Even you get mukti, liberation. Even you get siddha, some perfection. None of that is equivalent to seeing Krishna's smiling face. And so in this simple verse, in this single verse, even without context, I think it really packs a punch. It tells us we should be grateful we're here. We should not take it for granted. We should chant our rounds every day. We should follow our rules of sadachar, the principles that we live by, our lifestyle. We should not get distracted by the siren song of Maya. We should not even get distracted by some fledgling realizations that we have. We should be like the arrow maker, miles to go before I sleep. We should complete the hero's journey. We should climb Mount Everest. We should receive Krishna's grace. And we should finish the course. The verse is amazing in the sense that anybody can know Krishna in truth. They just have to stay the course and not get distracted. You know, it's like sometimes people are like, I can't do it. Okay, we just have to keep trying. I can't try anymore. Well, let's just keep going a little bit longer. I can't keep going. Well, then you just got to try. I want to give up. You just got to not give up. I'm going to give up. Now you just got to put that out of your mind. I can't get out of my mind. You just need to let it go. I can't let it go. We just need to move on. I can't move on. Well, you need to keep trying. You understand? There was a woman in Darfur. Darfur is in Central Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central Africa. There was a woman in Darfur. The Muslims just did this like horrible thing, and they cut off people's arms, wiped out whole villages. This has happened in the last decade, 15 years. This woman had to leave her village and walk hundreds of miles to a UN refugee camp. There was no water. She had to go without water for days on end. She had 2 small children with her. At some point on the journey, she couldn't carry both her kids anymore. She was too dehydrated. She had to leave one of her kids on the road to die of dehydration. She had to pick one of the 2 kids. She made it to the refugee camp, and of course there was some reporter there who got the story. And the woman was just, beside herself. Inconsolable. Understandably so. She tried. She couldn't cross the desert with 2 kids and no water. It's just not possible. So ultimately she had to leave one of her kids on the side of the road. And she has to live with that for the rest of her life. This isn't like that. we can decide, this is going to be my life's work. I'm going to see Krishna. I'm going to embrace Krishna in this lifetime. I'll do a bunch of other stuff as well, but I'm going to see Krishna. Every day I'm going to chant japa. Every day I'm going to stay faithful to my vows. Every day I'm going to be of service. And I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to stop. If you determine that, if you decide that, if you wake up every day and recommit yourself to that, if you make that an irrevocable part of who you are, there's nothing in the material world that can throw at you to stop you. The devotee's resolve to achieve Krishna is the most powerful force in the universe, and it is Krishna Akarshani. It attracts Krishna. The devotee's resolve to serve Krishna in all circumstances is the most powerful force in the universe. It's so powerful that it's Krishna Akarshani. It is attractive to the all-attractive one. Krishna means the all-attractive one. It is attractive to the all-attractive one. It attracts Krishna's mercy, and he helps. There's an old story. It's 1,000 years old in this regard. It's told by one of the Alwars. Very popular. There was a bird. Some birds put their eggs in the sand on the beach. This bird was stupid. It put its eggs too close to the shore. And the waves came and carried those eggs away. And so the bird decided, I'm going to dry up the ocean and get my eggs back. And so the bird flew over the ocean, picked up one beak full of water, and then flew inland and deposited the water on the ground. And then flew back out and picked up another scoop of water, another beak full of water. Just a fool's errand, an impossible errand. The bird did this day and night without break. And finally Garud, the carrier of Vishnu, who's also a bird, whose deity is there, came down and said, my dear brother, my dear sister, what are you doing? And she explained the situation. And Garuda said, I'll help you. And Garuda, the angel Garuda, went to the side of the ocean and began gathering up the ocean water in his infinitely large and deep beak. And immediately the eggs rolled back onto the shore. The ocean delivered the eggs back to the bird. We should become like the arrow maker, and especially we should become like this little bird. We should set ourselves to the task and not give it up under any circumstances. And we should rest assured that that will attract the attention of Krishna, who will make the impossible possible and will move heaven and earth for us and will help us to complete our journey. When I read this verse, these are some of the things I think about. Let's do a little kirtan. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.